Hello, it's Greg Grizzled and Gaijin. We're back. We hope you're having a happy day wherever you're listening to this audio content from. As always, we'd like to thank you for your continued support of Greg Grizzled and Gaijin's social media and writing efforts. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's been a bit, but I had posted some content and some other folks, I think maybe Philip Jackson, musician here in the Kansai, Kyoto area, mentioned that I used to do definitely not a podcast show. I'm connected with a lot of content creators in and outside of Japan. Paprika Girl commented that she would like to see some content, and I always appreciate her efforts. She's done some nice laid back and chilled podcast-esque kind of things that I've thoroughly enjoyed. Kevin O'Shea of the Just Japan podcast and several others, a nature podcast. More recently, Stories by Kevin, of his life abroad. He's lived in several countries and been through a lot, especially with all the trouble from 2020 that we shall not name. And other people too, who I would fail to mention or forget, but they know who they are, and I appreciate their support. You probably noticed, if you do follow me, and I appreciate you for that if you're listening this far, that I don't really write and put out much publicly. I do still write daily privately. There's a lot of reasons for that. Maybe I'll talk about that a little bit here. Probably try to go about 20 minutes. I'm staring at this little counter. It lurks and looks and stalks me as what shall I do to fill the time. But I'm good at stories. I've had quite the life in and out of Japan, to be sure. So there's that. But yeah, I don't write publicly nearly as much. To be honest, Twitter kind of changed after it was taken over, and the interaction just really wasn't worth it. My blog is still up. Craig in Japan. It's got a lot of content there, all free, basically. The only thing I ever put on there that costs any money is some of my books, which people either love, don't buy or download, or do anything with. Which is okay, and a couple people over the years trolled. Thanks for that. But it's there for posterity. Someday maybe future generations of my family will say, hey, who was that guy that we never saw because he lived most of his life in Japan? And that means something to me. I have, in earnest, on a happier topic, and if you followed me again on Craig Hoffman 11 on Twitter, and I appreciate that, studied Japanese every day in earnest. And I've also studied Spanish for now, I think, according to Duolingo, 155 days. And I do a lot. So maybe I'll talk a little bit about that. So this is kind of like catching up with Craig. I still work, as one does. Small international preschool. It's work. I can't talk too much about that. I'm not allowed. But it's work. That's twice, right? But I appreciate being employed. It certainly beats the alternative, which I've experienced here a couple times with contracts being over and things. So that's taken a lot of my time. And things at home take a lot of my time. People we love get older and bigger and have more commitments and responsibilities. So I find that I have very little time for myself. And so I prioritize my life. Do I give time to myself, or do I give it to my lovely wife and other folks who I am responsible for? So I choose that. But there's a price to pay, and the price and the person who pays it is me. And I'm not alone in that. I'm not saying, woe is Craig. Although this week I needed a woe is Craig, to be sure. So there's the introduction of what maybe I'll spend about 15 minutes or so talking about today. The cough should start there. My life was chugging along. I looked really forward to the Obon holiday here in Japan in August. It's September 22nd as I record this now. But I fell kind of ill. I felt kind of crappy on the Friday before, but I made it through my day. I went home. Saturday, Sunday, I felt worse. Monday was like a day off. I think I'd scheduled to take it, and then my wife's like, you got to go to the doctor. And when it opened after the holiday, I think the Tuesday, I have the thing that I shall not mention that everybody got around the world for the very first time. And it put me down hard for basically the entire week. I missed all that week of work. Could barely get out of bed. Just awful. Ton of bricks. And I'm a person who has never been really sick in my entire life beyond a few sniffs and sneezes and such. And maybe influenza, I think, once here back in like 2015, 16. But yeah, so that set me back a little bit there. But I studied every day. I got up and did my Duolingo and went right back to bed. And I read and studied Japanese. I get an A for effort in life. An F for results often. But it happens. So that set me back. So I didn't do a lot of social media and stuff then. And recently I ran into some trouble. Not that I wish to go down that road again. But Japan is a funny country. People can almost hit you with a car and you get a little miffed and you're the bad person. I'll leave it at that. But that wasn't good. Nothing came of it, but lesson learned and a cautionary tale. Be careful who you get cheesed at. The universe is a small, small place. And that town is a small, small place. And you run into some unique people. So that's been going on. And to be honest, I haven't loved living in Japan this year. And I don't know if not on some level that I was a little angry at Japan. And I often talk to people, Japan is not the problem. The problem is you looking to the mirror for the solution. And so I spent a lot of time this year looking into the mirror. And I didn't really like what I saw. Old man. I was out the other day at a local Italian place, Jolly Pasta, if you know. It's pretty reasonably cheap. At least it used to be. It's like everything else. The food has gotten smaller and the prices have gone up. Shrinkflation at its best here in Japan. But my wife took a picture of me and I posted on my private Facebook. And my family was like, wow, that's a great picture. And my sister was like, wow, that's a great picture. And she sent it to my mom, who has no social media at all. And they sent it to a local film developing thing still around in America. And they got it like 8x10. And that hangs in my mother's house in America. But all I saw in that picture was Craig got old. 49 this year in July. And so I take some stock of my life, and I wasn't super pleased. And that hurt a little. Not to get all like sappy or philosophical, but if I'm going to do this, I'm always honest, and I try to be authentic as a person. Doesn't make me perfect, though that I were. So this year I again pursued the foreign language angle because I think perhaps that's an avenue that could help my life. I'm pretty good at Japanese, but not great. Better than most people, but probably not somebody who's gonna wow you in some business setting, especially on the speaking. The listening, reading, I'm pretty competent. Writing, hey, I don't write much in English with my hands. I don't know. I probably could have pressed. I don't know. Spanish is getting better. I studied in school. I think I've posted that before. 4 years in high school, like many people do. A year in college. And then I kind of let it go, as one does. But I've been really enjoying that. I read every day at my lunch. BBC Noticias. There we go. That's a good one. And I read a lot of Japanese. I get short little articles. I go to work early to prepare. I go like 2 hours early because the JR trains suck, which has also been a point. It's like 71% on time for me this year. Not to gripe. This is not a griping, not a podcast. I'm not that kind of foreigner. There are a lot of foreigners like that. A few I've met recently. I try not to be like that. But it's a reality. My trains are late, and it cheeses me to some level. But I go early, and I pick little short Yahoo Japan. And recently I've been putting it into Nihongo Dera website, which lets you put furigana. That's like a little helpful hints for how to read whatever you're reading. I don't need a lot of that because I've been studying like a dog for years, and especially this year with words and things. But I pick up a lot of, and it also lets you click one more time for analyzer, which lets you look up the meaning of the word in English and the readings and such. I found it a very useful tool. So then I take the words that I didn't know in whatever short article, and then I make a list on the computer, and I have a file every day. Maybe I pick up like 5 or 6 new words, and then I review all of those words. I think I got like 321 words now. And my memory is pretty good. I've talked about that before. There's no humble brag there. It's just good. My mom was commenting, who also has a similar memory. She's like, wow, Craig, you really remember a lot. And I was like, well, you remember that I remember, so that's not too bad for your age. She doesn't like the age jokes, although she's like 68 now, almost 69, I think. No, 67? 68. She'll be 69 in November. Not that I should let that out, but there you go. God bless her and such. So yeah, I do that, and I study, so I'm not terrible, but I want to be better. And I got a little off track there, but it happens. But yeah, that's helped my Japanese. And I've also, not to talk company business, but at the company, most of my meetings, as you might guess, I'm an English teacher, are in English. The owner speaks a fair amount of English. My coworkers who teach English speak English, of course. But recently we've been interacting and trying to slide over with the Japanese staff, and some of them don't speak a lot of English. So those meetings, when we're talking about plans and things, are in Japanese, and I'm a big part of those plans as a small school. So I have to, or I want to rather, express my ideas fluently. Now I have a coworker who's a Filipino who and his mother's Japanese, who grew up here like from junior high school in school. So his Japanese is great, as you might imagine. So, and his English is good. So any gaps there, he kind of fills in. But I like to express myself. So that's been kind of a challenging goal. That aside, it's helped my Japanese speaking a lot. And you think, oh, you live in Japan, you have a lot, but most of my job is English teaching. And the rest of my job is out in public, where I try to avoid everyone and not talk to anyone, because there's a lot of weird people in this area these days. Man. So I speak English only at home, unless I'm talking to my mother-in-law. We have a little time on Saturdays. That's also helped. She bounces around and talks about a gazillion topics, as old people tend to do. No offense, Okasa. And so I have a chance to talk to her. And of course, when I'm with my lovely wife's family a few times a year, I have a chance to like talk. But there's a difference between talking and hanging out at the bars, which I used to do all the time, and like a business setting where the pressure's on. And last week I really had to come up with Japanese because stuff happened that was not my fault, but it could have been turned to where I look like a terrible person, and I didn't really want that. So yeah, you don't need Japanese. There's a the Real Japan is a travel kind of guru who does a lot of travel planning for Kansai and around Japan, if you ever need that. But he has this book like, you don't need any Japanese, how to be in Japan without speaking any Japanese. You don't need Japanese particularly, but it doesn't hurt. Like last night, or on Friday night, I was working late. I took another train line, Sanyo rather, and the announcement came, and left side, right side, and it was kind of garbled and hard to hear. I stepped out and I felt like I was wrong, and by chance there was a staff member there, and I'm like, hey, where's this town? And he's like, oh dude, it's over there. I'm like, thanks man. If I didn't have that Japanese, I probably would have taken the wrong train. Now I would have gotten off and turned around. It wouldn't have been the end of the world, but it was nice to have a little bit of Japanese to avoid a problem and have my lovely wife pick me up at the station on time, because I was tired. It was a long day. But I guess I've been kind of talking about Craig the person, and that's kind of, Craig the person is not Greg Grizzled and Gaijin. I wish I were. That dude's awesome. He writes music, which I've been doing. I posted. I've been working on some band piece for my favorite little genius. It's coming along. And so that dude is awesome, but the Craig part of me, which unfortunately is the reality, hasn't gone great this year. Not terrible, but not great. And so Craig felt, that's me, third person, that the universe was kind of stomping on me intentionally, and I didn't like that very much. And so I set aside Greg Grizzled and Gaijin to focus on Craig. And I don't think that was a terrible decision, but I really enjoy the Greg Grizzled and Gaijin side of me, because it's like the best of me. There's a dialectical thing, because it's If you're from Ohio, there you go. 'Cause it's the best. Those are the things that I aspire and dream and want to be. Great at languages. Great and well known as a writer. Composing to some degree. A person who on social media is dedicated to helping people and caring about people. I spent some time helping a foreigner here try to save his job. I don't know if I was successful. I don't know. But I invested a lot of myself into that. And hopefully it works out for that person. But that's all the best. And dreams and hopes. Like Grey Grizzled and Gaijin for me is like a symbol of what Craig wants to be, could be, should be, and probably, to be honest, after 19, almost 20 years in Japan next March, should be. But Craig isn't. And there's a gap between Grey Grizzled and Gaijin and Craig, the 49-year-old foreigner who limps out of his house to a small company for some yen. Again, no offense to the company. But that's the reality. And you know, you read these things and they say put on a happy face, stay positive. I have friends on Facebook and I do live feeds where I talk about my life deeply, specifically. And they're like, you know, you can do it. You can turn it around. You can stay upbeat. It's all about attitude and effort and work ethic. And maybe that's true. But I haven't felt very lucky. But then I've had friends this last couple of years. My father and family too, I should say. My aunt died. Loved her a lot. My father, we were not close. He passed away a year ago this week, in fact. And I had a friend last week, really like a second or third cousin too. Motorcycle accident, 46, died. My high school teacher, history and English from the 10th grade, died this week at 89. Friend from cancer, 49. Another friend from cancer, 52. And the losses piled up for Craig in my heart. Not to get all sappy with like about 90 seconds to go, but weighed heavily. And then you look in the mirror and like, what am I and who am I? And I don't have any easy answers to that question. I'm a regular person. And that's most people. And that's hard to take when you wish and dream and hope of being more, as many people, foreigners in Japan and probably people around the world, want to be. And I've seen recently like the Haitian stuff on the news and immigrants in America just trying to make it. And I'm a little lucky with being certain things to being an immigrant here. And it's difficult. I'm sure a lot of those people, a lot of them are in my hometown area now, and it's caused a lot of local grief of people who put all their problems and challenges and failures of life on people sleeping on mats in floors of small apartments that they can barely afford while trying to build a life in a brand new country. I get that. I've tried to build a life here every day since I came in 2005. And sometimes I've been really good at it, and sometimes everything I built has just been taken away from right underneath me. And I took it hard. And I didn't want to really get off the mat and pick up the pieces. The pieces get heavier when you get older. And I have coworkers that are a little younger as I close this out. But I always tell them, don't get old. And I felt kind of old this year for the first time in my life. And I'm not sure I liked it. But if you've listened this long, I appreciate you so much. It means a lot. Likes and shares and all that help get out and maybe perhaps push me one little step closer to the dream. As always, I hope you're doing well. And as I tell my family and friends each and every week when I do my live stream on Facebook, enjoy your life.